Who are in the auditorium class, go ahead and open your Bibles up to John chapter 8. We're going to continue with our study Life of Christ. We are finishing up the lesson 62, picking up on Roman numeral number 5. Roman numeral number 5, which would pick up there, it's John 8 and verse 48. That's where we'll be picking up at. But to go back and review a little bit, just to bring it, for those who may not have been here last week, we picked up with this lesson teaching on light and darkness. We started here talking about, and Jesus is making this, talking about where he's from, and again, finally is to the point of exposing his enemies. I was telling someone after class last week that I enjoy studying the life of Christ, but you come down to this point. Now, from about this point in the life of Christ, moving forward, this, I would have to say personally for me, is my favorite portion of it. Because Jesus is no longer telling them, don't tell what's going on. He's exposing his enemies. He's telling them, here's who you are, here's what you're doing, and I'm going to let the cards fall where they may, but it's still not his time. He still knows how, he still has that ability to, if you will, pump the brakes, keep them from taking him into custody, and begin the mock trials as we're going to see going into the summer series. We're not going to go there. Picking up in John chapter 8 and verse 48, and we'll read down to the end of the chapter, and then we'll go back and pick up and finish this lesson out. John records, he says, "Then the Jews answered and said to him, do we not say rightly, you are a Samaritan and have a demon? Jesus answered, I do not have a demon, but I honor my Father, and you dishonor me. I do not seek my own glory. There is one who seeks and judges. Most assuredly I say to you, if anyone keeps my word, he will never see death. Then the Jews said to him, now we know that you have a demon. Abraham is dead and the prophets, and you say, if anyone keeps my word, he shall never taste death. And are you greater than our father Abraham, who is dead? The prophets are dead. Who do you make yourself out to be? Jesus answered, if I honor myself, my honor is nothing. It is my Father who honors me, of whom you say that he is your God. Yet you have not known him, but I know him. And if I say I do not know him, I shall be a liar like you. But I do know him and keep his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. And the Jews said to him, you're not yet 50 years old, and have you seen Abraham? Jesus said to them, assuredly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. And they took up stones to throw at him. Jesus hid himself, went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. So notice the dynamic of what we're seeing here, that they're accusing him of having a demon. Why? Why do they accuse Christ of having a demon at this point in our study? Because he says he's who? Says he's the Son of God. Says God is his Father. And what does he tell them? He says, I don't have a demon. I honor my Father, but what does he want to say? He says, I honor my Father, but what does he tell them that they are doing? They're dishonoring him. Okay, now let's take a look at this. If he's honoring the Father, and they are dishonoring him, ultimately, who are they dishonoring? The Father. But their very narrow-mindedness, their very, if you will, thick-headedness. Are they picking up on what Jesus is telling them? No. They're still not getting this, that Jesus is saying, hey, ultimately you're dishonoring the Father. They aren't getting that. They're not getting this concept. They keep wanting to go back, and as pointed out here in Roman numeral number 5 on our outline, they wanted to start the mudslinging. What to kind of remind us of, without naming political parties or political candidates, we see a lot of this now when you see in our political realm. People want to mudsling. When they don't agree with, or they don't like, or they disagree with something that someone has said or done, first thing they want to do is mudsling. They don't want to stop and say, hey, let's gather the facts and let's just sort this out and determine what is truly right and what is right, what is wrong, and make the distinction. They don't want to do that. So there's nothing, it's nothing new for us in our culture and society to see the mudslinging happening. Jesus had it happen to him all the way back here in this. Here's the thing. He denies having a demon. And he denies being what? What do they call him? Samaritan. He denies both things. But again, notice something. Jesus does not stoop to their level. He doesn't stoop down to their level, and he doesn't get down here and start calling them, the derogatory terms. He doesn't start these things. What's he do? Points out the error that they're using against him. He exposes their error. He exposes them for who they really are. He said he sought to honor God, and they dishonored him. Again, it dishonors the Father. The Pharisees, they return to their name calling. Think about this. They say, are you greater than our father Abraham, who is dead, and the prophets who are dead? Who do you make yourself out to be? Now think about this. This same group of people, what have they been? A lot of these people that are making these accusations against Jesus right now, what have they been seeing up to this point? Where have they been? Who have they been following? What have they been witnessing? They're saying so some of these ones that are making these accusations, that are throwing these accusations out here, that are trying to, go to play dirty, if you will. They're some of the same ones who have been around Jesus the entire time that he has been has entered into his earthly ministry. They're the ones that have been here, and they've been seeing the miracles he's been doing. They've been seeing the sick healed, the dead raised, and multiple other things that have been happening. Still not dawning on them who they are truly in contact with. Now notice what Jesus says down here in verse 58. He says, what does he say? Notice what he says. He said, most assuredly I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. Another I am statement of Jesus. And if you're taking notes, Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 8, the Hebrew writer writes in that verse there, that's one of my favorite verses in all the Bible. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. If you take and you pull all three of those together and you pull it up to one simple phrase, I am. Because I am means past, present, future, all combined into one. There was no beginning and there's no end. And you can also take that back to Exodus chapter 3. In verse 14, the first place that we find the Lord referring to himself as I am. Where was that at? Back in Exodus chapter 3. Yeah. Before Moses went into Egypt, the burning bush. Think about this. All the way back in Exodus chapter 3. Moses, Lord tells Moses, you're standing in take off your shoes, you're on holy ground. And he tells him, you're going to go down in Egypt, you're going to bring my children out, you're going to do these things. Moses says, well, who do I tell him sent me? The logical question. The Lord says, you tell them I am. He says, I am who I am. You tell them I am has sent you. Not I was, not I will be, I am. No beginning, no end. And to me, that's a comforting phrase, I am. I am. You know, amongst all the names that God can wear, Yahweh, Jehovah, and then all the names that Jesus wears, all the phrases that refer to him, I am is the most simple and the most, to me, it explains the best who he is. It gives a very good definition. Jesus, you know, he brings us here. What did they do at this point? Now, Jesus has to remove himself because what do they do? They skipped over what? What had they done here up to this point in this exchange of talking with Jesus? What had they been doing? Insulting. This time they didn't insult. What did they do? Yeah, they picked up stones. They're ready to kill him. You know, these people. They are serious about this. They're like, wait a second. You know what? If we can't get through to you here in just in a few words, get you to break down and say that you are not God, we're going to stone you to death. They go from mudslinging and the derogatory language to automatically just, hey, we're just going to kill this guy. Again, fast forward 21st century culture and society. Sometimes here in the United States, and you look at the news from around the globe, there are places this is happening. People don't agree with whatever's being said. They jump straight from, you know what, I'm not even want to talk to this person anymore. I'm just going to kill him. It's not the answer, is it? Absolutely not. Jesus knew what he needed to do. He withdrew himself from the situation. He got away from them. He slipped away. Why? Because it's not yet his time, as in it's not his time to be arrested, not to be tried, and not to die. Not to die. So when we see this, we have to remember, you know, when we're talking about light and darkness, what is we look at this was Jesus doing this, the master teacher, but what is one of the lessons we can learn from this that we can implement in our lives in 21st century culture and society now? What's one of the lessons we learn from this? Because there's multiple lessons. Number one, don't stoop to their level. Don't allow yourself to be dragged down into the name calling and the mudslinging and the derogatory terms. Number two, learn to differentiate truth from fiction. And when the time is right, utilize that distinction between truth and lies to help expose false teaching when possible. And that's not always going to be the most favorable thing to do. It's not always going to be the thing to do to say, hey, let's expose this. There are times like what happened with Jesus here. You know what? I'm out of here. It's going to be too violent. It's going to cause a riot. It's going to cause this. But if you find yourself in a situation where you're able to have a conversation, have a discussion with someone, and it doesn't turn physically violent, and you're able to talk to them, and you're able to help expose the truth to them, because when you expose truth to someone, what are you doing? What else are you exposing? You're exposing the false teaching, the lies. Exposing truth automatically is going to expose the error that's being presented. So that's what we have to, and that's one of those things we have to remember when we go through these and we look at these lessons and we look at how we can make application into it. We have to be able to gain wisdom, and you know, it's life experience. A lot of times they will tell you whether this is the opportune time to do it or whether it's not. I wouldn't expect our high schools, children who are in high school still, to be able to go in and enter into a discussion of being able to discern, truth from error, like it would those who have been Christian and have been studying the Bible for 20, 30, 40 years. Why? Well, the older we are, the greater, the more knowledge we gain out of God's Word, but also, that life experience, the wisdom of being able to know, this is the time to pull this card, this is the time to hold it back and not do this. So that's one of those things we have to look at and realize Jesus did that, just like we see him doing here. Any questions on lesson 62? Lesson 64, moving on over, and this is going to be over in John chapter 10, verses 1 through 21. And this is we're moving. Again, we're not moving through every lesson. I promise that every lesson will be recorded and put up for everyone to be able to go back and listen to in the future, so that the study of the life of Christ can be complete. I apologize. There have been hiccups along the way. Technical hiccups, health delays, and things like that prevented the recording of some of these lessons and getting them posted, but they will be put out there. We're jumping from the end of chapter 8, jumping over chapter 9, where Jesus again restores in the first part of chapter 9. Just as I help bring us up to speed to where we're at here in chapter 10. We're going to be in chapter 10. He heals the blind. He makes the blind man to see. The Pharisees, they excommunicate the healed man. And then Jesus comes down here and talks about it at the end of chapter 9, true vision and true blindness. So that is talking about the spiritual application of it that we see. But we come down to chapter 10 and we see Jesus the Good Shepherd. What makes Jesus the Good Shepherd? What makes him the loving shepherd? Think back first century. What did shepherds do for the herds and flocks of sheep that the groups of animals they would take care of? How? To what extent? When you say totally, Mary, please elaborate. Huh? You're saying elaborate. Okay, so he takes the shepherd would fight off the wolves, would fight, make sure that they were find the one who was lost, make sure that they had food, make sure they had water, make sure that what was the most extreme thing a shepherd could do for his sheep? Yeah, lay down my life. Good shepherd would actually lay down his life for his sheep. Think about that. And a lot of people will come back to this, and they come back and they'll come to passages just like this, and they want to look at this and they say, well, Jesus is the loving shepherd. He's the good shepherd. Jesus would never, ever condemn someone. He would never judge someone harshly. He would never do that talking about on the eternal realm, on the spiritually eternal realm. When we think about Jesus being the good shepherd, what is a passage in the Bible that most of us like to go back to read, to remind us of how loving and how caring Jesus really is as the good shepherd? Where at? Yeah. I thought I heard somebody say Psalm 31. I was like, wait a second, I think you're off by about 7. Yeah, the 23rd Psalm. We think about this. You think about the 23rd Psalm. Psalm 22, Jesus is suffering. Psalm 23, Jesus is coming into his death and is dying. Psalm 24, Jesus is crowned Lord and King. So when we come back to those 3 Psalms, and we look at him, that middle in the 23rd Psalm, it talks about the Lord is my shepherd. And it starts off, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You know, right there. For me, you know, I mean, it's a beautiful psalm. I love the entire thing, but, you know, in reality, I can stop right there. Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I will never want. Boom, done. I could, you know, you really could. You could stop right there. I'll never need anything. But he goes on, David goes on to record in that psalm what? He records everything he does. Leads us beside still waters. Doesn't say he's going to take us down to Summersville, West Virginia, expect us to go below Summersville Dam on the Gully River, take on Class 8 rapids. No. He's going to take us out, you know, he's going to take us out to the Ohio Valley and let us walk down to the Ohio River, which is flowing nice and smooth and slow, and be able to not be in harm's way. I'm not going to be along the Gully River where there's rocks and there's danger of falling in. I'm going to be along, you know, just using it as an example, the Ohio Valley. Everything's going to be flat out in that valley. I'm going to have an area to be able to be properly fed. I'm not going to have those dangers of falling into the water. If I do, I'm easily brought back out. And that's what we have to, when we start, then we have to begin to look at these things, it makes sense. So when we look at this, and we think about it, let me back up here for a second. We're talking about Jesus. So two types of workers, shepherds and the gate and the doorkeeper. Jesus is the good shepherd, but what else is Jesus referred to as? The gatekeeper, the door. He's the door. He is our all in all. He's, you know, what is it, John 14? In John 14, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by me, meaning except through me. John chapter 3, verse 17. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but the world through him might be saved. Oh, we start to see the correlation that we have to go through Jesus, not by Jesus, not over Jesus, not under Jesus, but through him. And think about this. He's the good shepherd. He is the gatekeeper. He is the door. He is the one. He is our all in all. He provides every type of protection that we could ever think of needing in this life. Come down here and let's start down here and read in verse 7. Well, let's start back here at verse 1 in chapter 10, and we'll come down here and read all the way down through verse 10. John records there, he says, Jesus saying, most assuredly I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper opens, the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his sheep by name and leads them out. When he brings out his own sheep, he goes before them. The sheep follow him, for they know his voice. Yet they will by no means follow a stranger, but will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. Jesus used this illustration, but they did not understand the things which he spoke. Then Jesus said to them again, most assuredly I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If any man enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come that they may have life, that they may have it more abundantly. So think about this. And the question here on the screen is, what does it mean that Jesus is the door of the sheep? Well, he's our shepherd. But he's also, again, we go back to John chapter 3 and verse 17. We have to go through Jesus to enter into that realm of safety. How were these, let me ask this. Think first century. let your mind, let your imagination work a little bit here. How would shepherds at that time, or those who are keeping livestock, how would they have kept wolves and predators at bay at night from getting in to harming the animals that they were shepherding? What means may they have used? Okay, a wall, some type of enclosure or a wall. What could that wall or enclosure have been made of? Rocks or hedges. Think about that. Yeah, so when we're talking about hedges, are we talking about the types of hedges like we see out here, out in front of the building? No, we're talking about something that had that. Now it just slipped my mind. Yeah, it hasn't been pruned back. Mike, help me out here. What were the trees that grew down here on the bottom part of the property that cut the tires on some of the tractors? They had the big long thorns. Honey locust, that's it. Thank you. Honey locust. You think about that type of thing. A long thorn that would, even pierce through a tractor tire, with what we have today. They had to be careful when they were, between us and 81 when it was cleared off. They had to be careful of that. So shepherds would use this type of natural defense to put their animals in. Is a wolf going to come through that type of, or predator going to come through that type of, hedge? No, absolutely not. It's not going to come through there. It's like, it's like us going out here and saying, hey, you know what? There's a building over here that I want to get into. I'm going to go over and I'm going to climb over it with the barbed wire and everything is protected. It's meant to keep me out. I'm going to get. No, I'm not going to do that. I know I'm going to I'm in harm's way. I'm not going to do that. So when we think about this, Jesus is saying, I'm the door. This is the way I come into here. What does Jesus call those who don't want to come in through the door, but by other means? What does he call them? Thieves and robbers. Now think about this. As I was saying, I'm reading this lesson and I'm reading through here and I'm reading this passage and I'm thinking, you know what? This is not going to be a quick lesson because there are a lot of examples here that we can use from this. Think about this. When we look at what Jesus is teaching and this with this figurative language, using a shepherd and using himself as the door, saying you have to come in, you have to come through me, to come in the peace and spiritual safety, spiritual peace. What is he exposing? Remember, we're still under Jewish law. We're not in the New Testament church yet. But when we jump now, let's pull what he's talking about here. Let's pull it over first into the New Testament church. What application can we make when we look at this? Well, he's calling them thieves and robbers, but who else is he calling a thief and a robber? Anyone else who doesn't want to come in through the door. He's saying, if you don't come in the way that, if you're not going to enter into my kingdom, he's inferring, the inference he's giving here, if you don't come in through the door, if you don't enter in the way that you're supposed to, if you're trying to hijack your way in, you're a thief and a robber. The only thing you're wanting to come in and do is come in. You want to come in to steal, kill, and wreak havoc. Think about that in our culture, in our religious climate, present day. There are those who will try to downplay. I don't have to be baptized. Baptism is not essential. Jesus says, "Hey, you're trying to climb across the wall. You're a thief and a robber. I can continue to live the way I want to live. You're a thief and a robber." Or any other thing that they want to try to say that is against the will, against the Lord's will, you're a thief and a robber. Jesus was exposing those at that time, here at this point, and when he's talking to them, as exposing their error. But it's just not there in first century where he's at. He's exposing error from there all the way out till he comes again in the clouds. Think about that. He's exposing, at this point, he's exposing thousands of years of human error that's going to be committed. And he's saying you're a thief and you're a robber. He's the door of the sheep. He is the one, he is the way, he's the only way to the Father. Then we come down to 11 through 16. Continue on. John records Jesus saying, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. But hireling, he who is not the shepherd, one who does not own the sheep, sees a wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf catches the sheep and scatters them. The hireling flees because he's a hireling and does not care about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my sheep, and I am known by my name. As the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Other sheep I have, which are not in this fold, them also I must bring. They will hear my voice, and they will be one flock, and there will be one flock and one shepherd. Think about this. We're his sheep. He's telling them at this point, you're my sheep, and this is how much I love you. He compares himself to these self-serving Jewish leaders. He says, I am the good shepherd. I'm going to lay my, he explicitly tells him, I will lay down my life for you. In no uncertain terms. And these people still are not getting it. They still don't get it. They are still not grasping the concept that Jesus is saying, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to protect you, even if it comes to the point of me dying. He makes a very good point here in this passage when he says that the hireling does not own the sheep, and it will scatter. Think about that. Think about this. In 1 Peter chapter, and it's something I typically don't do, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to pull up my digital copy of the Bible. In 1 Peter chapter 5, Peter's talking about telling the elders. And he says, the elders who are among you I exhort, I who am a fellow elder and witness of the sufferings of Christ, also a partaker of the glory that will be revealed. Listen to what he tells the elders of the church to do. He says, shepherd the flock of God which is among you, serving as overseers, not by compulsion, but willingly, not for dishonest gain, but eagerly, nor as being lords over those entrusted to you, but as examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that does not fade away. Think about this. Jesus is talking about, here he's saying, if there are hirelings, those who don't know what to do, don't know how to conduct themselves, don't know how to lay down protection, my sheep are not going to follow them. Peter calls Jesus the chief shepherd for a reason. Because we come into the New Testament age, we say we have the elders. Elders, bishops, shepherds, pastors. Those terms are used interchangeably for the same office for the same office in the Lord's church of those men who watch and oversee the local congregation. The chief shepherd will appear in the last day. As I was studying, as I'm reading this lesson and preparing for this evening, I'm looking at this thinking, this shows the magnitude, the gravity of the responsibility that those men who serve as elders in the Lord's church carry on their shoulders. They're responsible. The three elders we have here at Central are responsible for 200 and 30 plus souls. When they stand before the judgment seat of their Lord in the day of judgment, they're going to answer for all the souls that they've overseen while serving as an elder in the Lord's church in his kingdom. Of why they guided, be judged for the good things they did, and judged for why didn't you guide these children in the way they should have been guided. And we begin to look at the passages like 1 Timothy chapter 3 and Titus chapter 1, and it gives this extensive list of these are the things that these men must possess. Well, let's come back here to John chapter 10. Jesus says, I'm the door. I'm the good shepherd. The shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. There's a great responsibility that we as Christians have. A huge responsibility that we have to not only know Jesus Christ, the chief shepherd, but we need to know those men who are leading us in the local congregations, whether it's here at Central or wherever we're at. Those men who are the elders in the congregation, it's our responsibility to get to know them just as much as their responsibility to get to know us. And for those who may be watching online and being in another congregation, you have elders. When's the last time any of us went to the elders and said, hey, I'd like to take you and your wife out for lunch one day or have you over for dinner to be able to get to know you better? It's not always, a lot of people have this concept that it's the elders' that duty to have everyone over to their house or the preacher's job to have them over to their house. It's just as much the elder, the congregation's job to be reaching out to the elders and getting to know them. Why? Because when there is spiritual harm, we need to be able to know when those men say, this is the way that we need to be, this is the direction we need to go, that we have the confidence and the faith in them to know that this is the right direction to go. Not because it's there, not because it's there, it's that they have come up with some grand scheme of this is the things we need to do. The chief shepherd has said, hey, you know what? This is how you guide my sheep. You're not a hireling. They're willing to guide. They're willing to go through adversity. They're willing to lay down their lives, to put their reputations on the line. Any leadership role, whether it's in the Lord's church or whether it's in secular government, there are going to be decisions that you make that, whatever decision you make, there's always going to be those who favor it. There are going to be those who don't favor it. Ultimately, we have to come back to this. Come back to the Bible. What did the chief shepherd say? Did he say to do it? That's what we do. Is this the path we follow? This is the path we follow. Are we being led in green pastures and by still waters? Absolutely. There are going to be some hard times getting to those places? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's going to be bumpy. It's going to be bumpy, and it may get a little hairy at times, and we may hit a few hairpin turns. We may get up there where there's no guardrail, and it's 3,000 feet down to the valley below. But we're going to be led safely to where we need to be. Verses 17 and 18. Continue on. Jesus goes on to say, therefore my Father loves me because I lay down my life that I may take it again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down. I have power to take it again. This command I received of my Father. What has Jesus just done? What did Jesus just do? He just gave these people a glimpse, a very small glimpse into what's going to happen in the very near future. These people didn't take his life from him. He gave it for it. He gave it for us. If he's able to give his life, he's able to take it back. He possessed his life at all times. Why does the Father love Christ so much? Because of his obedience. He's God the Son. He is perfect through and through. His death happened because he allowed it to. Jesus tells us that in verses 17 and 18. But notice this, the second question, fourth point down on the screen here is, why did Jesus feel the need to explain this at this point? Well, think about this. He's making a point that he is the good shepherd. He's making the point to say, you know what? I'm saying I'm the good shepherd. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give my life. I'm telling you, he's telling them, I am literally going to go the distance. I'm going to give my life. I'm going to bring it back. I'm taking it back. And I have complete control of it no matter what comes down the line. I am in full control. I am in full control. So when we take a look at this in this passage here, when we take a look at this, and then John goes on to finish it out, and he records here in verse 19, he says, "Therefore there was a division again among the Jews because of the sayings, and many of them said, 'He has a demon and is mad. Why do you listen to him?' Others said, 'These are not the words of one who has a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind?'" What's he done? What has Jesus done? Think about this. Up to this point, this crowd seems to be united in wanting to ridicule him, wanting to try to ransack everything that Jesus has done up to this point. Now we see what? What did he do to them? He divided them. Part of them is starting to say, hey, wait a minute. There's some validity to what he's doing here. There's validity here because if he has a demon, if he's truly possessed by Satan, how can he restore sight? How can he heal the blind? How can he do these things? He exposes the error. He puts truth out there, and in putting the truth out there, he exposes the error. Again, when we do that now, we expose truth, and we lay it out there the way we ought to, and it's just not us saying it. We're picking this book up and we're exposing the truth to people by proving it to them. You don't have to say. We don't have to say a word. We don't have to say you're in error. We don't have to say you're wrong. No. It may not be immediate, but it's going to click in their brain. Wait a second. I need to go back and look at this. There's a difference between what they're saying and what I believe. It's going to cause them to go back and begin to reevaluate. Questions or comments on lesson 64? Lesson 68 is in the back, on the back table. If you didn't pick it up, we're going to pick up with that next week. And that's going to be over in Luke chapter 12, verses 1 through 12. We're taking a look at the latter part of his Judean ministry, and he's beware of the Pharisees. That's what we're going to be looking at next week. If there aren't any further questions or comments, let's go ahead and we'll close with a word of prayer. Father, we come before your throne this day giving you thanks for the health, for the life that you bless us with, for the much needed rain that we're receiving to help to bring forth the plant life that is going to help to produce crops and produce and food for us in the coming summer, to help to keep us fed and nourished physically. But Father, we know that as we are looking around us at the physical attributes, that we can make many lessons and many applications from your word and from the creation around us, how we are so richly blessed and so richly fed spiritually. And that we can realize that you'll never leave us, you'll never forsake us, that you will always make sure that we are taken care of with the basic needs in the physical life, but always richly taken care of spiritually. Father, we pray that as we prepare to depart from this meeting place, that you would watch over all of us, allow us to return to our respective homes this evening safely, that you would watch over us through the remainder of this week, that you would help us as we enter into the weekend to begin clearing our minds, preparing our hearts and minds to come back here on Sunday morning, to be able to open your word and to bow before your throne, to worship you in a manner that is holy and acceptable in your sight. Most of all, we thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, who makes this avenue of prayer possible, to be able to ask for the forgiveness of the wrongdoings we commit, but to give you thanks for all the blessings that you so richly bestow upon us on a daily basis. We ask this in his name, and amen.